Good morning, everyone who's joined us this morning. My name is Andrew Geens. I'm head of CIBSE Certification Limited. As you can hopefully see from the title slide, I'm a chartered engineer and fellow of CIBSE. I'm quite proud of the fact that I joined CIBSE in 1984. I was an incorporated engineer at the time and joined as a licentiate. So I've been associated with CIBSE for quite a long time, but I joined them as an employee in 2011, which is still quite a long time ago. Okay, so just a couple of background information slides. Why does CIBSE operate a certification body? Well, the certification body issues certificates in accordance with international standards, and this is increasingly referenced or required by government regulations or by clients. If it's done with UCAS accreditation, that's third-party verification, it provides added confidence in the certificates issued by the certification body, and that's the way we operate for most of what we do. This certification is often a different requirement as well as requirement when it comes to professional body membership. So there is a difference between professional body membership and having a certificate of competence such as the ones that we issue. So certification is usually vocationally specific, whereas CIBSE membership, for example, as a professional body, membership is more general. You could be a lighter, someone who designs lifts, heating, ventilation, air conditioning, acoustics, all comes under the umbrella of CIBSE membership, whereas we're certifying specific vocational competencies. So CIBSE certification isn't a CIBSE society or division or network, nor a special interest group. It is a standalone business for the purpose of certification. And I thought I'd mention that early in the presentation because sometimes I think people think we are a part of CIBSE in that way, that we're a division or a society or something. So international standards that we're involved with or interested in. The bulk of our business activity at the moment is around ISO 17024, which is the standard for certifying the competence of personnel. This is a service that we provide for CIBSE members, but it is open to all. That's a condition of the UCAS accreditation. So although we're a part of the CIBSE family and CIBSE created the business to provide this certification capability for members, it is in fact open to anyone. So you don't have to be a CIBSE member to be on our registers. So also importantly, this is a maintained certificate. So it's not like a college certificate that you get it once and that's it. There are things you need to do to maintain your registration with us. When I joined the business in 2011, 17024 was what we did, certification of personnel. We did it under UCAS accreditation, which is quite onerous. It's quite a lot of work to maintain that accreditation. And I thought it would be a good idea to build on it, because once you've gone through the pain barrier of accreditation for one standard, it's a little bit easier to extend into other areas. So originally on the back of our ESOS assessor register, we decided that having the capability of certifying 50,001 energy management systems was a good idea. Those of you involved with ESOS will know that that's one of the means of complying with those regulations. But a lot of companies that operate a management system will do it in an integrated way across a range of different areas. So we've been expanding to meet that demand. We're currently UCAS accredited for energy and quality. We are in the process of applying for the environmental management, the 14,001. We're expecting a decision on that in a couple of months' time. And we've already got our application in for the occupational health and safety standard. So this is still a service associated with CIBSE, but it's for companies rather than individuals. So it's for the building services industry, but it is again open to all. And I'm quoting UCAS here when I say working in conformity with international standards is what good looks like. From the outset, we've tried to position ourselves with a personnel business as the quality end of the market, as you'd expect with our association with CIBSE. So, not strictly CIBSE products, but we are part of the CIBSE family. So there's no direct connection with CIBSE membership, either in terms of being on our registers helping you with CIBSE membership, or being in CIBSE membership specifically helping you with being on our registers. Professional body membership does help you with some of the entry requirements, but not CIBSE specifically. And just to wrap up on why we are separate to CIBSE, it would be difficult for CIBSE to operate as a certification body. In the world of certification, they're referred to as a related body. So it's acknowledged that there's a connection between us and CIBSE, but we make our certification decisions independently of CIBSE. So this webinar is a workshop on our application process. So I'll just quickly run through what the options are for joining our registers. So if we start with the CIBSE Certification Low Carbon Consultants Register, this is a register where there's no legal requirement. So there's no legislation that says certain work has to be done by one of our low carbon consultants, but quite often employers and clients specify it. So I have seen it in job adverts that the employer is looking for someone who is a low carbon consultant, and clients in their tender documentation often mention it as well. So it's commercially there's an advantage in having it, but there's no legal requirement. We use it as a foundation in knowledge and understanding of the energy performance and management of buildings, and use it to tell clients that they've been assessed their knowledge and understanding by us, and offer consultancy in the relevant area. So it's broken down into different strands. We use the term strands, so low carbon consultants, design, building operation, simulation, and ENMS. So these are people who've been assessed as competent in issues around the design of buildings, with respect to energy performance, or the operation of buildings, or software simulation, all with reference to energy performance. The last one is the energy management systems. So they can provide consultancy on implementing ISO 50001. That's self-evidently to do with energy. So it's all to do with energy in one way or another. Moving on to the next set of registers, the low carbon energy assessor registers. There is a legal requirement to be on an approved register to produce and lodge energy performance certificates, display energy certificates, or air conditioning inspection reports as required by the energy performance of building regulations. So we operate under a letter of approval from the government department, MHCLG. We're seeing a lot of government ministers on television at the moment. So Robert Jenrick is our Secretary of State. So we have a letter of approval from him, and also the Building Standards Division in Scotland. And we assess people on their behalf using the National Occupational Standard as a reference. But we do additionally require that our EPC and DEC assessors are LCCs in the relevant strand. So the design strand for EPC and the operations strand for DEC. This helps them set themselves apart in a crowded market. Back to my earlier comment about wanting to position ourselves at the quality end of the market. People on our registers that can produce a DEC can also talk to their clients about how to improve their DEC rating, likewise for EPCs. So we have people producing non-domestic EPCs. We don't get involved in the domestic market. I know some CIBSE members do, but we decided not to do that. So the associated low carbon consultant there is design. We have about 3 to 4% of the market share, which doesn't sound very much, but so we are aiming for the quality end of the market. A lot of new buildings, EPCs are lodged through our scheme, and a lot of the bigger, more complex buildings. And although that's not a very big number, it has grown from 2% over the last couple of years, probably as a result of the MEES regulations, minimum energy efficiency standard for rented property, which has caused customers to be a bit more interested in the quality of their EPCs. And as we've been marketing ourselves as the quality scheme for a long time, this was an opportunity for that to be beneficial to people on our registers, and we've seen that as a doubling in market share. I have a bigger market share for decks and for air conditioning inspection reports. A lot of words there, so I thought put it in a diagram to simplify it a bit. So we've got the LCC register as the core competencies, and then building on that, you can demonstrate competence to be an EPC assessor or a deck assessor or an ESOS lead assessor. The air conditioning inspectors and heat networks stand apart from that. We don't require LCC registration for either of those. So the third one on that diagram that I haven't mentioned yet, this is another legal requirement. To be an ESOS lead assessor, you need to be on an approved register. These regulations came in 2015. The register had to be put together fairly quickly. Our application to run this register was fairly straightforward. The Environment Agency were worried about competence using a publicly accessible specification, a PAS 51215 as the reference standard, but they were also worried about maintenance of competence. So the fact that our LCCs were certified under the procedures of an international standard and with UCAS accreditation, all of those boxes were pre-ticked. So our application was fairly straightforward. We were the first register to be approved, and that's been quite a successful register for the 2 cycles we've seen so far. It's a 4-year reporting cycle. Our ESOS lead assessors represent about 40% of the market, with about a dozen schemes in the market. So that's a significant market share. The Heat Networks Consultant Register is a no legal requirement register. We operate it for people that want to demonstrate their competence in using the CIBSE Code of Practice for heat networks. This is why there's no connection to the LCC register. It's quite specific, but we are hoping this will be the first in a series of registers in support of a series of low carbon technology codes that CIBSE are working on, supported by the government department BEIS. So the aspiration is that in future, when BEIS are funding initiatives, they will require the consultants involved to be on our register as evidence of their competence, so they know the money's being spent properly. So that's what we offer, a range of personnel registrations, some to satisfy legal requirements, some to promote your business. And those where there's legal requirements are examples of what I was talking about earlier. Being a CIBSE member doesn't allow you to produce EPCs. You need to demonstrate very specific competencies. It's likely that if you are a CIBSE member, you'll have those competencies, but it's not automatic. You need to go through our processes. So some of the application processes are relatively straightforward. So for the list there, the LCC registers, we do have different registers for Scotland. I mentioned Scotland in passing earlier. The energy performance of building regulations are different in Scotland. The building regulations, which are where a lot of the energy performance related information is different in Scotland. So we do maintain registers for England, Wales and Northern Ireland separately to registers for Scotland because of the different competencies required. But for all of these, it's a fairly straightforward application form, sort of the administrative information we need about you and some other information. The most important part of the process is the assessment of your competence, which is through an examination. The international standard that we're working to is quite clear that we're assessing competence, that we're in principle sort of not interested in how you gain the competence. We just need to know that you have the competence. In other words, we're not interested in that you've done a particular training course. We don't say to be an LCC you must have done this course first. You do have to do the exam. The only exception to that, as you can see in the brackets there, is the ESOS lead assessors. If a scheme operator requires it, that overrides the standard. So in the case of ESOS, the Environment Agency who were managing that for BAYS said that they wanted lead assessors to do a one-day training course and assessment specifically on the rules around the ESOS regulations. So training is specified there, but everywhere else, it's up to you how you have obtained the competence. We simply want to assess that. So just a quick visual representation of the process, 7-step process, starting with you deciding you want to be an LCC. The second step is to undertake that exam evaluation, submit us your application, and then it's over to us for step 4 and 5. And then it's a team effort. Then once you're registered, you need to maintain certification. So that's through things like CPD. So we monitor that you're doing CPD and recertify you. It's not a certificate you get and then keep and forget. Like you might have from a short course or a college course. It's a certificate that is time limited and you have to conduct maintenance activity to keep the certificate live, to keep renewing it. So the evaluation part, I said we don't require training. A lot of people don't like the idea of an exam without training. So to avoid confusion about mandating training, we decided to subcontract all of the assessment process and any associated training. So that's for the LCC register, but also for any of the software associated with energy certificate production. So naturally enough, our parent company offers training. So at this point, we refer you to the CIBSE website. This is a useful prompt to remind me to let you know that all of the slides will be made available to you after the event. It's being recorded, so you can access a recording. All the slides after the event, you don't need to be scribbling down long URLs. You'll be able to access them afterwards. So with this, we're sending you to the CIBSE website training section. You'll see there, that's one for the LCC design, and there's information about the exam. There's information about preparing for the exam, so a reading list, the sort of thing you're expected to know, and you can use that. There's also some example questions. You can use that to decide whether you think you can just take the exam because you're very experienced and knowledgeable, or whether you might just like to take the training course to be on the safe side. But that's a decision for you to make, not for us to make. Step 3 is then to get the application back to us. So just to put that up again, to remind you of the overall process. And it's the same sort of process for the heat network and for ESOS as well. The ESOS form does require a bit more information, filling in information about your experience. So the step 3, my slides seem to have gone into reverse there, but I think they're back on track. So the step 3 is back to us. So you'll see there the URL is cibsecertification.co.uk. So you're back with us, having gone over to CIBSE for the assessment. And there's a list there of the sort of things we need. There's an application pack for you to download with the form and the code of conduct for you to sign. We need a photograph for your ID card, and we need your insurance certificate. So that information is all on our website. We've already had a reminder of that. So I'll move on to the LCEAs now. These are people producing energy certificates. Just in case anyone's not familiar with these, I'll throw in a couple of images. An EPC on the left, a display energy certificate on the right, energy information about a building. Similar sort of format to the energy information you get on white goods and even on aircraft. I've noticed when you get on board some planes, you'll see something like this by the door telling you how energy efficient or not the plane is. So applying to become an EPC assessor or a deck assessor, if you're already on the relevant LCC register, it's a straightforward application to become an LCA. If you're not already an LCC, you can do the two together. You don't have to do one and then the other. You do need to be an LCC to be an LCA, but there's no reason not to run the applications in parallel. There are 3 ways you can arrive at our register. The qualification route, so there are vocational qualifications. I think City and Guilds are probably the household name. ABBY is another one in the built environment sector. So these are vocational qualifications, and there are specific ones for producing non-domestic EPCs or decks. So if you've done one of those courses at a college and have that certificate, you still need to be on the LCC register, but that qualification is the assessment of your competence to produce EPCs. So that's a fairly straightforward application. If you're already with another scheme, but you've decided you'd rather be associated with our register and have the advantage of being on the LCC register as well, you can transfer, which is also fairly straightforward. If you've been through another scheme's assessment procedure, we just have a few checks we need to make with them, that you're not coming to us just to avoid quality control issues with them. So that's fairly straightforward. But if you don't have the qualification and you are not transferring from another scheme, you go through our APEL process. It's the most commonly used route. As I said earlier, it's likely that people in the CIBSE community already have the knowledge and experience. They survey buildings for other reasons, condition surveys and so on, or do non-regulated energy advice already. So they're likely to already have all the skills and wouldn't need to do a course to learn about that. What we need to do is ask you to go through an APEL process, that's recognising previous experiential learning, to demonstrate you have the equivalent knowledge as if you have done the qualification. So just a very simple illustration of that, if this was to do with display energy certificates, which are based on metered energy consumption, somewhere in the National Occupational Standard, and therefore somewhere in the qualification learning outcomes, you'll need to have learned how to convert different energy units into kilowatt hours for entry into the software, because that's the way the software wants it. So if you've got gas metered in meters cubed, you need to know how to convert that to kilowatt hours. So if you did the qualification, there'd be training that would teach you how to do that. If you're an experienced energy professional, you could just give some examples on our APEL form of where you've done that sort of conversion in other energy advice work that you do. So for all of the knowledge requirements of the qualification, you go through and put examples of how you already know that. And you will also need to be assessed on the use of the software, but the main part is this recognition of what you already know through our APEL process. So a similar flow chart. We have a pre-APEL. So the idea here is we do an assessment of you before you start to make sure your CV looks as though you do have the right experience, because we don't want people deciding they want to do the LCC exam as part of this, which costs money, and they might even decide they want to do the training to prepare for the exam, which costs money. And we wouldn't want them to do that and then find out that we were saying as part of the APEL assessment, actually you've got some relevant experience, but we don't think you've got enough. You either need to go away and do the qualification or go away and get some more experience and come back in a year's time maybe. So the idea of the pre-APEL is just to make sure you're likely to have the right experience. There's no guarantee of success, but it does reduce the risk of committing time and expenditure unnecessarily. So there's also a step in there about submitting example certificates, because that's the end product for an LCEA. And the last part of this, as with all of our certificates, is the maintenance of certification and recertification on a regular basis. So information on all of this is on our website. I've just done a couple of screenshots to give you an idea of what it looks like. This page is talking about the pre-APEL, this free assessment of your 2 years full-time experience, which is what we consider you would need to be successful with this application. So you must have a minimum of 2 years relevant experience. There's a whole list of information that we need from you: proof of identity, your statement of experience and CV, insurance. If you do have professional body membership, we need that because that allows you to bypass a couple of steps of the APEL process. Other qualifications you may have that support your claim to already know how to do this. And CPD record. The NOS requirement, this is the longest bit of the form because it is all the different National Occupational Standard criteria. A referee to confirm that you have done what you said you've done, code of conduct as you'd expect, and ending with an assessment fee. This is all handled through an online assessment process, which makes it easy to manage. I'm able to give you the sort of headline bullet points going through this, but the idea is that when we get to questions and answers at the end of this, you'll have the benefit of the whole team who are waiting in the wings. So depending on what questions you're asking, the person who deals with it on a day-to-day basis will step in and hopefully be able to answer your questions. But one of the team have given me a sort of heads up on some of the common problems encountered, just to head things off at the pass. So we require insurance. Just to clarify, those documents would need to have the details of the insurer, the policy amount, and start and end date. Detailed information on the policy. Signatures required at the bottom of the application form and on the code of conduct. Apparently that's often missed. And if you're on other registers already, don't assume that we do have the right documents for everything. Do submit everything that is being asked for. And also remember that there are these several LCC strands, and they are linked if you're going for LCEA to specific strands as well. So design linked to EPC, operation linked to DEX, and so on. So being on one register doesn't automatically open the door to some of the other LCC registers. You will need multiple strands. So I said we've got an online process that helps manage this, the LC applications. They're a bit more complex than the others. So this is what this looks like, just a couple of screenshots. So you create an account in the usual way, and you'll be familiar with that sort of screen. But other things that you do, you then come in and once you're logged in, you can view the programs. So it's for these three, it's EPCs, DEX, and air conditioning reports. And then this is the pre-APEL. So this is the information you need to upload for your pre-APEL, you'll see there's an option to skip. If you're pretty confident you've got years of relevant experience and you don't want us to do that pre-check, you just want to plow on, you can skip this, but it is there as a free check if you want it. But if you skip it, or even if you do it and we say okay to go ahead, you then go through. So the list on my previous couple of slides, you'll see it again there in the software. You just work your way through, upload what's being asked for, and it's easy to save what you've done and come out and go in again later, and you can see where you are in the process. So we did update this a couple of years ago to a new supplier, and it does seem to be working quite well from the user feedback we're getting. In expectation, there will be a few questions. There are frequently asked questions, support pages, and again, we've got the links there. So that's the application to become an EPC deck or air conditioning inspector. In my introduction, I did mention that we had added the ability to certify management systems, which isn't so much for the individual, it's for the companies that you work for. But just to provide a bit of detail on that, the 4 standards that we're working with are those. So we started with 50001 because of the link with ESOS, and the fact that all our personnel registers are in some way connected with energy. That was a logical first step, but we are developing that full program for companies that integrate multiple standards. Now, that was our business rationale, but it is quite likely that most of you listening today work for a company that has a 9001 certificate on the wall. It's often asked for as part of the tender process, and quite possibly 14001 as well. So I would urge you to consider whether, given other associations you might have with CIBSE, if your company likes to tell people they employ CIBSE members, maybe they like to be associated with CIBSE events and awards, maybe they're CIBSE patrons. This is another way to demonstrate their association with CIBSE, because our certificates not only have the UCAS logo on them, they have CIBSE certification logo, so there's a clear connection there with CIBSE. And there's a good chance that if you're doing your certification with us, the auditors that turn up will be building services engineers or engineers connected with building services. And that's not always the case with some certification bodies. Obviously, a lot of the big certification bodies cover all sorts of sectors and are maybe not as focused on our industry. So that's just a plea to you as individuals to go back to your companies and look at what certificates you have on the wall, and maybe think about how nice it would be to have our logo, which you can see on the bottom right hand side of the screen, on your certificates. All the information for applying is on our website. There's another link there. I've just copied a few bits of information. I picked 50001 as that was our first standard we were accredited to illustrate it. As you can see, we suggest that you have a system up and running for 6 months before you apply to us. So you've completed things like internal audits, which we need to see as part of our audit process in order to certify you. Obviously, if you already have a certificate, that's a given. So that statement is more for people that are coming at this for the first time. When you're ready to apply, either because you've implemented a new system or because you already have one and you're looking to transfer it, you can download the application pack, and that's all the information that comes with it. So you simply fill out the application form and send it to that email address, and we'll get in touch. Transferring is very straightforward. If you already have a UCAS accredited certificate, the level of faith in that is such that it's quite easy to transfer from one certification body to another. It's a desktop review of your existing documentation. We send you a quote to take over that certification. If you're happy with that and sign it and return it, we issue a certificate at that point. That means it's then safe for you to cancel the certificate you've got from someone else. And we simply pick up the audit cycle wherever it was with your previous certification body. So no money actually changes hands until we get to that point in your cycle, which is normally an annual cycle. So it is a quick and easy process. If anyone would like to do that, just get in touch. So, whether you're applying for new certification or transferring existing, our focus is on the building services engineering sector, and our UCAS accreditation scope is based on that. The exception to that is the energy management. That is a wider scope because energy use is a bit more universal. So we're certifying across all sort of building types and all industrial buildings, all industrial sectors as well, and transport. I'm going to finish by paraphrasing local football team managers. It's a phrase I've heard often because a lot of small team club chairmen are also fans, and they often say this is a football club run by fans for the fans. I'm going to paraphrase that and say we're a certification body run by building services engineers for building services engineers. And at that point, thank you for listening, and we'll now sort ourselves out to deal with any questions you have hopefully been asking while I've been talking. So if anyone from the team is already prepared on this, do step in at this point. I'm just opening the questions for the first time.
Yes. Hello, Andrew. It's Pablos. There is a question on whether the slideshow will be available to the people who are attending the webinar. I think you did mention something about this.
Yep, slides and a recording of the webinar will be available. We'll put it on our website as a news item. So there will be a slight delay in that, but either later on today or tomorrow, if you go to the news section on our website, cibsecertification.co.uk, you'll be able to download the slides or a recording of the webinar. I think it will probably also be on the CIBSE website because this is actually a CIBSE organised webinar.
All right. There's another question on what do you mean by there is no legal requirement to use an LCC? What could those legal requirements be?
Okay, well, yes, I went on to talk about the legal requirement to be on an EPC register or an ESOS register. Strictly speaking, the Environment Agency requirement is to be an LCC. Actually, they consider our ESOS register to be a subset of the LCC register, as I showed on our illustration. But it could be that the government decides to fund energy efficient refurbishment of non-domestic buildings. That is a possibility in the future, and they might decide that they don't want people who are not competent advising people how to spend that money. Competence for people working in and around buildings is very much on the government agenda at the moment, following the unfortunate events with the Grenfell fire, and it will spread wider than just things related to fire. So I think any sort of government money that's being made available to improve buildings, it's possible in future that they could say you can apply for this funding, but the project has to be managed by someone on the CIBSE LCC register. When the EPC requirement first came in, I think CIBSE were hoping the government would say something like you have to be a member of CIBSE or the RICS in order to do the competency assessment to be an energy assessor for EPCs, but they decided not to have that sort of prerequisite. But for funding things, that would be an example of where there could become a legal requirement. But at the moment, it is just voluntary, that some employers and clients voluntarily set as a requirement. So we've then got a question: is LCC certification available to NZers? I take from that you mean someone in New Zealand. You should have asked that question a bit earlier, actually, because I returned from New Zealand in mid-January. We could have done any assessment requirements while I was over there. I think the answer is yes. We do have people on our registers from around the world. Our assessment is based on UK regulatory requirements, though. So LCC design, the assessment asks you questions about UK building regs. So if you were in New Zealand, you need to demonstrate you knew about UK building regs. So I'm not sure how much of a problem that would be. If it was a question about the management system certification, the answer is still yes. The UCAS accreditation we have is recognised internationally. UCAS belong to the next tier up, the International Accreditation Federation. We currently only certify outside the UK in mainland Europe. But there's no reason we couldn't certify further afield. We would probably need to look at long-term using local auditors, but there are ways of doing that. So I'm not sure what certification you're asking about, but hopefully that's covered your question. The approved qualification list. Yeah, someone's saying, where can we check the approved qualification list? I graduated from a non-EU university. I'm not sure if it is approved. The qualifications I was talking about for EPCs and DECs wouldn't be a university qualification. These are very specific vocational qualifications to either produce DECs or EPCs. So the university qualification wouldn't cover it. It would probably put you in a good place to do the APEL route if you had associated practical experience to go with it. We've then got a question about the LCC design training online live course. Would it be applicable to the exam for LCC Scotland? Not entirely. Shall I answer that, or I'm monopolising this a bit? Does anyone else want to come in, or is that one best for me? CIBSE Training are offering LCC design training online, experimentally in the current situation. The exams have always been available online. There is a bit of overlap between the LCC design exam for England and the rest of the UK, and then for Scotland. But the difference is all of the questions relating to building regulations are specific to either Scotland or to England. Wales and Northern Ireland have their own building regs, but they're not different enough from the England ones to warrant separate assessment. So we do treat England, Wales and Northern Ireland as one assessment, but Scotland is different enough that it's a different assessment. So the parts of the exam that are just covering general energy performance knowledge, it's the same in both exams, so the training is helpful there. But the building regs element, you need to be confident you knew the Scotland building regs well enough independently of having done the training. I hope that makes sense. Can the webinar PDF be sent to us by email? I'm not sure whether CIBSE do that. I don't know whether Richard's there in the background and can answer that.
Sorry, yes, we can do that. We can make a PDF of the presentation. Also, just to mention, as well as the link on the website, everyone attending will get an email with the link to the recording as well. So.
Okay, thanks, Richard. There's a question about insurance. Would somebody else like to answer that? Because I'm probably not the best person. So it's regarding insurance. Would this be provided by the company, or would I require personal PI insurance? Doesn't sound like we're getting a volunteer for that, so maybe I'll have to answer it. Yes, if you're being employed by a company and the company are doing EPC work, you'll be covered by their insurance. If you're working as a sole trader, you'll need your own. So the answer is either. It would depend on your personal situation, how you're doing the EPCs. So if you're doing them for an employer, it's their insurance. If you're not doing them for an employer, it would need to be your own. It was mentioned that applicants should be on an LCC register. Would completing the LCEA APEL process add me to the LCC register automatically, or is it a separate process? I think the short answer is it's a separate process, but you can be doing both at the same time. But I think that would be one good for someone else in the team to elaborate on that, either Helena or Atija.
Yeah, I can do that. So applicants applying for LCEA, if they are not on the LCC register yet, they do not have to apply for the LCC first. They can apply to become low carbon energy assessors, LCEAs, and once the LCEA application is finalized and they are on the LCEA register, then they are automatically added onto the LCC register as well. So basically the LCEA register includes the LCC register as well. So I hope that answers the question.
Thanks, Helena.
Okay.
And someone's asking about needing insurance for an LCC. So who would like to answer that one?
Yeah, for LCC, we require professional indemnity insurance certificate. So as part of the application, either LCC design, operation or simulation, applicants have to provide professional indemnity insurance certificate.
Yes, the difference for energy assessors is they also need public liability insurance.
That's correct. For LCAs, we require both professional indemnity and public liability insurance certificates. It is very common that applicants send either, different like employer's liability. Again, applicants need to ensure that with the application they're sending, so for LCCs, either professional indemnity insurance or for LCEA, it's professional indemnity or public liability insurance certificates.
Okay, that should be and public liability. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Thanks, Helena. But I think we've exhausted all the questions, so we've done well in the time available. I will just finish by reminding everyone that all our contact details are on the website, and please do get in touch if you have any questions that weren't answered. That's the problem with these webinars. We don't know whether we are fully answering your questions, so do get in touch if we haven't fully answered your questions, and if any questions occur to you later on, please do get in touch. I hope that's been useful, and join us again for future webinars. Stay safe and thanks for attending.